Thank you for laying it out so clearly, both Jeremy and John, and to move us into the discussion, and I might be repeating some things we're going to be talking about at the plenary, but I just wanted to give you a sense of where things are in the United States. For the majority of American people, war is not on the top of their agenda, probably the same here, right? And they would probably say, what war? Or what wars? Because now they're so morphed and they're so complicated that it's very different when it was mobilizing lots of people to oppose a war in Iraq, whereas now there are so many different facets of the wars going on that it's much harder for people to grasp. It's also at a time when people in the United States are focused on, like they are here, economic issues. We have the big issue of the daily attack on youth of color in our communities that has mobilized a lot of young people in a very positive fashion to take to the streets, to be demanding that the police stop shooting down people every day in our streets, and connecting it to the war issues, connecting it to the fact that a lot of the material that's used in our communities is coming from the military-industrial complex that is bringing these home from the wars in places like Iraq. Is connecting it to the fact that many of the people who are gunning down the young people are veterans of the Iraq and Afghan wars who are given priority to become members of the police forces, and unfortunately much of their PTSD is being played out in the streets of our cities. The American people, probably like the people here in this country, are indeed tired of seeing our troops being sent overseas, which is why the wars have morphed in the last decade from ones of direct intervention to ones where there are proxy wars, or, as in the case of President Obama's latest technological use of drones, killing people by remote control from Air Force bases, air-conditioned, ergonomic chairs in the United States. This has had the effect of really keeping the wars more and more hidden from the American people. So we're at a situation where the anti-war movement is at a low point, but the wars have not disappeared, they've only changed. And then we have elections coming up. And with the elections coming up, unfortunately, this is always a time when the militarism starts coming out more, as if the American people want more militarism. But it's the media that really plays on this and starts looking at each candidate as, will this candidate keep us safe from these evil forces around the world that are out to get us? And so it moves the entire political discussion further to the right. We see this with even the most left candidate of the Democratic Party who's come out now, Bernie Sanders, who's excellent on the economic issues, but when it comes to foreign policy issues, while he's against U.S. Military troops being sent overseas, in his 12-point plan for the presidency, he doesn't even bring up the military budget and the need to dramatically cut that in order to fund all the economic things that he is for. He's also a Zionist and is in favor of U.S. continued support for Israel. This is the most left candidate that we will have within the Democratic Party. On the Republican side, they are trying to outmaneuver themselves to see who is the most hawkish. We have Jeb Bush, who came forward, and when he was asked in an interview, knowing what you know now, would you have done what George Bush did, which is approve the invasion of Iraq? And he was very confused for a minute, and then he said, yes, I would have approved. And after that, he got attacked by all kinds of people, and now he's trying to backtrack, or he did backtrack around that. But he is in favor of U.S. military intervention overseas, and he's the more moderate of the candidates. If you look at somebody who just announced Senator Graham, who is important because he's an important senator in the Foreign Relations Committee in the United States, he is wacko right-wing. He is saying that we should send troops into Iraq. He is saying that in the case of Iran, there is nobody to negotiate with in Iran because there are no moderates in Iran. And we have Rand Paul, who had a very good foreign policy platform, not as good as his father Ron Paul did, until he decided to run for president. And now that he's decided to run, he is moving further and further to the right. In fact, he once said that he supported an end to U.S. money going to Israel. He has backtracked on that, as he has backtracked on a number of things. Now, I wanted to end my remarks focusing on what I think is the most important thing for the anti-war movement in the U.S. in the short term, and the very short term means this summer, and that is around Iran. The talks with Iran, the nuclear talks with Iran, are supposed to come to a conclusion at the end of June, and then in the U.S. in July, this is supposed to be brought to the U.S. Congress for approval or disapproval. And this is where things have really are heating up. We have the Democratic Party, many of the people within the party wanting to support one of the few good things Obama is doing foreign policy-wise, and that is trying to resolve the situation in Iran through nuclear talks, through diplomacy. So there are many people in his party in the Congress that want to support the president on this. We have in the Republican Party, however, an extreme attack already on these nuclear talks. And they are trying to derail them in all kinds of ways. Already we've seen a newcomer to the Senate, Tom Cotton from Arkansas, who wrote a letter, and he actually got it signed by 47 other senators, going directly above the head of Obama to the Iranian officials saying, whatever conclusion comes with these nuclear talks, we're not going to abide by them. And the next president who comes in is not going to abide by them. And we have Congress people who are lined up now to oppose whatever deal comes out because they want Obama to have another foreign policy failure. So this is going to be a very critical moment. And just as we have worked with our colleagues, in Britain on trying to stop the Iraq War, on successfully stopping the attempt to get involved militarily in Syria in 2013, so we have to work together to find a way that we force our governments to go ahead and sign these nuclear talks with Iran, not only to avoid a direct confrontation with Iran, but because Iran is absolutely necessary if there is going to be any solutions to the terrible situation in Iraq, in Syria, and Yemen. We need to be negotiating with Russia, we need to be negotiating with Iran, we need the countries of the world together to stop the wars. So let's talk about how we can work together over the summer and beyond that to stop the wars. Thank you. Well, I'll be very brief. I think that one of the ways that we can confront the power of the Israeli government and the strong Israel lobby in the United States is to come to a positive end to the nuclear talks on Iran. I also think that this growing boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement is really seen by the Israeli government as the #1 threat, at least in the United States, and in fact, the very rich magnate Sheldon Adelson, who is buying many of the elections in the United States, this weekend is having a big confab in Las Vegas to try to counter BDS. And one of the ways they do this is to say that anybody involved in BDS is anti-Semitic, which is why it is so important for the Jewish community to be very strong on this issue. And as a member of the Jewish community, I'm very excited that there is a growing movement like Jewish Voice for Peace in the United States that is very strong and very forceful on this issue. And the last thing I'll say is that since the name of Irving Kristol, the neocon, was invoked, that his definition of neocon was a liberal that was mugged by reality. I think our job is to mug the neocons and let them see reality.